Hey, I'm Scott.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Doxologic, where we help you think with your Bible.
Moving along here, how should we understand the conflict in Israel from a biblical worldview? How ought we respond?
So October 7th, Hamas, which is an Islamic terrorist group and also part of the government or the governing authority of at least a part of Palestine. And I do not have all my geography, West Bank and Palestine. I'm not going to pretend to, again, know more than I actually do. Yeah. But knowing that they attacked in a just horrific, live streamed, just brutal attack, Israel from the, correct me if I'm wrong, was it from the south? They flew in on hang gliders and came in on foot, and just the equivalent would have been about 50,000 people in America dying in one day. Like if you extrapolated, that's how it just to the nation what it was. So let's also establish this: the conflict that has been going on for not only decades but centuries between the Jewish religion and faith and Islamic faith. And so how do we assess what's going on right now is one thing. How do we understand historically and theologically something that is not just, I know it's hot right now, it's on a lot of people's minds, but just set the context that this thing is literally of biblical times and of biblical origin, for first of all.
I mean, you could go all the way back to Genesis,
right,
and establish this relationship between Abraham and Sarah, and Sarah farming Abraham out to Hagar for children, and that separation and sending Hagar on her way with Ishmael was the foundation for this, split off. The promise was going to remain with Sarah.
Yeah.
The promise was going to remain with Isaac. Abraham's overwhelmed, right? There's a sense of God's going to take care of them, but it's not going to be the same promise that Abraham was promised by God in the covenant.
Isaac was the child of promise,
yes,
not
Isaac
Ishmael.
was the child of promise. So there's so much to read. It's kind of hard to want to break this down. But Genesis 16 would be a place where this starts to unfold. Okay, so let's just start in verse 5. Sarah said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be on you. I give my servant to your embrace." And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. And so Sarah had brought Hagar to Abraham. Hagar gets pregnant. Abram says to Sarah, "Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please." And Sarah deals harshly with her. And so God comes to kind of care and respond, and yet sends them out, and the promise continues with Isaac. So you have this unfolding, and then there's this battle as the people of God are delivered out of Egypt. They come to the promised land, and basically from then on out continue to have ongoing problems, right? With the nations that are there, with the command to devote to destruction, that they don't fully accomplish. And so there leaves this kind of lingering. There's the battle where the Philistines were the ones that were kind of carving up the coastal region and occupying what should have been Israel's territory from the very beginning. And so you go through the time period of Old Testament history, and you see that there's this constant battle going on for not only the land, but against the peoples and against their ideologies. And that continues on down into today. And so then you get into the complex situation of, first of all, it's a tragedy no matter how you see it. And it's a tragedy that has a theological dynamic to this, right? And an ideological dynamic to it, and we can't get away from that. But then you can kind of get into the dynamics of, what is promised and what this means for certain people, depending on how you read the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24 and 25, how you understand the birth pains that Jesus talks about, and this kind of accelerated persecution that's going to take place, almost anticipating in a sense the premillennial kind of end to history as we know it before the return of Christ to establish his kingdom on the earth, right? And so there's this expectation that further and further persecution was going to happen. Anyway, there's so much to talk about on this in a 5-minute clip.
Yeah.
So conflict in Israel, we could say, has a lot of historical history, biblical history.
Sure.
And then the second question was, how ought we respond to what's happening right now?
Well, in one sense, we should respond like we should respond to other such acts in other places in the world, one nation against another, one people group against another, with hearts that want to see the gospel be preached. The only lasting change that will come is not just between one government and another signing a peace treaty, but it's going to become the successful proclamation of the gospel for many, many years. Hearts changed ultimately to Christ, right? With the gospel, the seed of the kingdom, the mustard seed language or the leaven language, the gospel is the answer, right? And so our goal is to see through missions and through church planting and through successful discipleship in nations, seeing peace begin to be established. And so, yes, we want to see conflict end governmentally or whatnot by ceasefires and things like that. But it's many people, I would argue, they go further than is necessary to just like focus everything on Israel and Palestine, as opposed to, well, how should we respond? We want justice. We also want to see the gospel go forward, and we want to see conflict in the world through war and atrocities. We want to see that ended. One way is by governments coming to their right minds and establishing peaceful relations across borders. That it doesn't include people becoming Christians, right? We do want, we want that, but more than that, we want to see the gospel be preached. So whether it's Islamic conversion to Christianity or atheistic conversion to Christianity or the secular Jewish state, which is what 90+% of the nation of Israel today is so thoroughly secular, and it's as westernized as anything is in the Middle Eastern area of the world. We want to see the gospel be preached, and then see the power of God convert hearts. So that's what we want to see, and how do we respond? That's the first thing we would do, generally, like we should do in other places. But I bet the listener wants to know more about: is there a way we should respond because this is Israel? And I think that's probably going to be longer than just.
That's what I was trying to gauge. How much do we get into in like a 5-minute answer?
Yeah.
But definitely pray for Israel. Pray for Palestinian Christians as well, because there are Palestinian Christians. And Pastor Tyler has made a mention to me of like there are actually there is a growing number of Palestinian Christians as well. And sometimes because of the eschatological framework with Israel and the future promise to Israel and the scriptures and those kind of things, it can be pray only for Israel.
Right.
And that may be controversial to say we should pray for Israel. But we should also pray for the Palestinian Christians, and more specifically for Israel, that those who are secularly Jewish would come to repentance and faith in the Messiah.
Yeah.
And through that, these two, Ephesians 2 kind of thing, becoming one body in Christ, and that God would leverage this trial to bring people into the kingdom through faith in Jesus Christ. And I know that work is taking place as this kind of not underground, but just the workings of Christians to care for and bind up the broken is taking place right now.
Right.
Wherever that is happening, we need to be praying for that. That's one of the best things that we can be doing, and plead with God that this would be a work of grace in the midst of this tragedy, that people, it's one thing to die physically. It's a far more serious thing to die an eternal death.
Right.
And that God would spare many from an eternal death and separation from Jesus Christ, regardless of their background. But absolutely praying for all of the things mentioned would be a great way to start, and pleading for gospel hope. I would also say too, there are good people in Israel right now that are watching, this take place. Good schools that are there, organizations that are there that you can lean on, and just get updates for what's going on, and make sure you're committed to praying through those things. That's a lot of what we can do right now, and offer help insofar as you're able with reliable, trustworthy ministries that are already on the ground.
I guess the last thing would just be caution. Our immediate reactions on social media. There is so much, like, I think the last year, if not two, has shown how propaganda from both sides, whether it's Russia and Ukraine or whether it's Palestine or Hamas and Israel, AI is a big deal right now. So videos that are not even actually real, or images that are doctored and not real, like, watch out for what the desire from propaganda is. Immediate response and making enemies online and things like that. Just watch out for that tendency, I think, that's out there, and we, in any of us, myself included, can be held captive to some of that, and just like taking maybe a narrative, taking a side, not to say we want the side to be God's will be done and truth and justice, but personally just watching out for that, like, compulsion to react, because stuff within a matter of days at times gets proven to be debunked, but it's already like spinning around the whole world way faster than the truth can ever catch up to it. And so just it's important that we're a bit cautious to just accept everything that comes out of somebody's account. So
that's a helpful caution.
Yeah, that's good. It's a big question for a small
thanks, guys.
platform of an answer.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Doxologic, a podcast by Doxa Church in Rockland, California. To learn more, visit us online at doxa.church.